and I get it, I was there, I've been that person like, "Oh my God, I'm never having a cesarean," but those things getting spoken out into the universe, you don't know who's listening to them. It kinda did. It was like a bit of a kick in the guts to me, even though I've dealt with those feelings. Do you know what I mean?
Hey everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Entering Motherhood, a podcast dedicated specifically to new moms going through this amazing journey in life. I'm your host, Sarah Bilger, a postpartum nutritional coach / mechanical engineer. And as always, I'm so excited to be here with you and share all of the information I've been lucky enough to obtain since becoming a mom. In this episode, Hannah and I connect over our cesarean stories and agree that it's just so awesome that even though we're on different sides of the world, we can still connect on that level of motherhood. Hello and welcome to Entering Motherhood. And I'm so happy to have you here. And if you would like to go ahead and just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we can jump into your birth story.
Awesome, okay. My name's Hannah, and I'm from Australia, from, a town about 2 hours north of Sydney. I've got 2 children, a son named Oakland, and he's 4 years old, and I have a daughter named Romy, who's actually 3 next week.
Yeah, I knew that you had the 2 kids, but I didn't know how old they were.
Yeah, so they're very close in age.
That's great. We have Rosie. She is 1.5.
Oh, I loved that age. That was my
Yeah.
favorite, around the 18-month-old mark, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so you have a blog. How long have you been doing that? And what kind of got you started doing that?
So, I'd always sort of loved writing, and to be honest, I probably thought about starting it after I had Romy just as an outlet, and then I just finally decided to do it one day because maybe I felt like I had so much to say just since becoming a mum. Um, and because I did find it quite challenging the first time around, I sort of thought, surely other mums feel this way. And, you don't hear so much about what goes on. Like you see the pretty stuff, the nice stuff on social media, like the mums getting photos in matching outfits, and it just looks like all bliss. But I was really struggling. So I thought maybe I can share that, and in the hope that mothers that are feeling the same, they can relate. Because I know when I read or I hear something that I can resonate with, I feel so much better. So that was kind of the idea behind it. And then I got such a good response, like exactly the reason why I started it. And it sort of grew sort of a bit more of an Instagram following, and I talk to a lot of the readers on there. And yeah, it's just been really good just to connect with other mums.
Yeah. So that was after your second child, right? That's what you said.
Second, yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, not right after, yeah, but so last November. So it took me till a couple of years, but yeah, finally got there.
So April is Cesarean Awareness Month, which we both were chatting about, and I think
Yes.
that's something that we connect with, and that's something that we have both been through. I had my first. I was in labor for over 24 hours, and it had just been kind of decided that was the route that we should go,
Oh,
and I was very much kind of in the same position as you, as I thought everything was going to be natural. I thought I wasn't even going to
yeah.
do the epidural. Like, this was not, how things were going to go. And, I'd love for you to kind of share your story and how that went, and how things progressed. And then with your second also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the first time around, and like you said, I sort of had a preconceived idea, like most things in life, of what my birth would be like. And, every midwife appointment, they were like, "You're young, you're fit, you'll have a natural birth, you'll bounce back." So I just thought when I got to 41 weeks, I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess I'll my obstetrician said, well, we can induce you or I can let you go another 42 weeks. And I said, oh, let's just do the induction. And again, I didn't really research inductions very much. I'd heard a couple of not so great stories, but going back to what I'd been told, it would be straightforward. So I had the induction on a Wednesday afternoon. They started with the Cervidil tape, and then I was to go back to the hospital the next morning for my waters to be broken and to be hooked up to the drip. So that all happened, and then I had my waters broken at 8, and I was on the drip till about 4:30 p.m. the next day, and it wasn't really progressing as well as they'd hoped, but I was sort of unbeknownst to that because I was going through labour. I sort of feel like I had no idea what was going on at the time. But then I do remember the obstetrician coming in and he said, we got to do something here. And I really didn't even register with what he was saying. He kind of said, I'll give you a little bit longer, but we may have to do a cesarean section because Bub's heart rate is not coming back up as quickly as he'd like. So that happened, and within him coming back in and saying, yep, we've got to do this, I feel like he was delivered within like 20 minutes. It was so quick. Like, I feel like I didn't even have time to realize what was going on. And I think because I was so tired and exhausted from being in labor for so long, I just was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And I think that maybe had a lot to do with my mental recovery after, because it wasn't something I could build up to. It was so quick from the moment they decided to do it. But, obviously I wanted the safest option for the baby, and that was what it was. So, yeah, that happened and he was born, and so that was an emergency one. And I feel like it took a couple of days for me to start to feel those feelings of, okay, I didn't do this the way I wanted to. I feel like I've copped out because I didn't actually birth my child naturally. And I would say it took me a really long time to feel like I hadn't failed or my body hadn't failed. And it was feelings I didn't even realize could come up because, again, I never even considered having a C-section. So that was pretty hard, trying to recognize those feelings and deal with them, being a new time, a new mom. And, I did eventually get to a stage where I realized, it doesn't really matter what way you birth your baby, you're still their mum. And some things are just out of your control. And that's very much what happens with a lot of emergency C-section. So yeah, that was my first one. With Romy, I actually had been planning a VBAC, so vaginal birth after cesarean. And my obstetrician said, yeah, look, you've got every chance of doing it. Is only a hot dig. There's a slight risk of a tear where you've had your cesarean section scar, but he had all the faith that it would all be good. And things were looking on track. And then at 34 weeks, we were actually in the process of moving house. And I feel like that may have attributed to this, but my waters had a rupture and I had a slow leak. So because of that, I had to stay in hospital because of the risk of infection. They eventually let me go back home as long as I went back for monitoring every day. And that kind of put an end to me having a vaginal birth, because in the end, my only option was induction or C-section. And there was just no way I was going to pick an induction again, because the likelihood of me having a cesarean anyway, it was probably going to happen. And so we chose to do a planned one. And I don't think I struggled as much that time. I think it was more just the upset of the what ifs, what if we weren't moving house? Would my waters have still broken early? I dealt with the feelings of having a cesarean. So it was a different experience, obviously, being a planned one. It was, I was more aware of things. I wasn't tired, exhausted after being in labour for so long. But it was definitely such a mental challenge for me, and I didn't see a lot of people talking about it. When I was feeling these feelings, I would go on Google and type them in. Yeah, so that's my two cesarean stories.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a lot of that same thing, how you had said like the what ifs. I was in labor for so long, and then it had come down to just like this one final moment, and you're pregnant for these 9 months, and it all comes down to one day, one moment, and it's either a rushed quick trip in, or just like a quick decision that has to be made, that you're all of a sudden like, wait, hold on, what just happened? And you don't have that time, and you don't have that mental capacity to kind of comprehend what's going on. And I think, that's exactly what you were explaining, and that's how I was feeling when it was happening, and you don't have that time to process it. So how you said that week after, and you finally were kind of, what happened? Like, did my body fail? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? And it does take a long time to really believe in yourself and trust that you did all that you could, and that you are the mother of that child. Like, you are still a mom. It doesn't matter how you birthed that baby. And it's so hard. I know that there has been an increase in cesarean, so I feel like it's happening more frequently. But you're also hearing that external noise of, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you, or like, I can't believe like you had to do that. And I'm like, I didn't think that there was anything wrong initially. Like, I was like, I got my baby out, like, she's safe, she's here, we're healthy. And that new mom brain is just kind of like in a fog of, you're just trying to take care of your baby and take care of yourself. And now people are telling you you should feel bad about what just happened. And so, that's like definitely what I struggled with, just all that external noise of like, did I do something wrong? Did my body fail me? Did I not do enough? Should I have done more? Should I have made a different decision? And I think that's so hard to kind of like filter through and be okay with and be confident with, because when I was going through my birth plan and what I had wanted and everything that was going on, cesarean was nowhere on that list. That wasn't even like, I was like, I knew about it, I knew people that had it, and I was just like, oh yeah, no, like, I'm gonna go through it, I'm gonna, I was like, that won't happen. Like, that was nowhere even on the radar. So, now being on the other side of things.
Yeah, it's funny on the other side, because you're thinking back to what you thought and what you had planned for. You're like, "Wow, okay, well, that didn't what happen."
Yeah, so I think I really want to, still be that support for that mom that's initially going through these feelings, and let them know you did everything that you possibly could. Your body did not fail you. You are the mother of that child. You birthed that child, and just giving them that confidence and that support and that feeling of, they did all that they could. And even when it is a planned cesarean, I think that's a choice that the mom has every right to make.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and yeah, it's one of those things, like, how do you support someone that is struggling with those feelings, knowing you've been there yourself, and it's just becoming okay with things that are out of your control, and if it is something that you've planned, being okay, being confident in the choice that you make, but also knowing you have made the right choice, because, we're the first person to doubt our choices. You can make the absolute right choice and what feels good in your gut, but you're still always going to second guess yourself. I feel like it's just, learning to trust yourself, knowing that you did everything, which is just really hard for mums to do sometimes. And, I struggle with that daily in motherhood, just with parenting decisions. But like with the planned one for my second, I still struggled with the what if, because I thought, we hadn't worked out. Okay, well, what if I did do the induction and maybe the induction did progress? But yeah, and I totally agree with what you said about the comments you sometimes get from people, or like, it was really funny just the other day after we'd talked about doing this podcast, I was at a birthday party and I was listening to a mother talk about her birth experiences, and she sort of said in passing comment, "No way I was having a cesarean." Here's me sitting there, and I'm like, obviously I didn't tell her I'd had two, but I was just like, there is this, and I get it. I was there. I've been that person like, oh my God, I'm never having a cesarean, but those things getting spoken out into the universe, you don't know who's listening to them. It kind of did. It was like a bit of a kick in the guts to me, even though I've dealt with those feelings. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it can always resurface, and I still get those feelings of, and then you feel embarrassed or kind of like I'm sure you didn't
Yes.
say, "Oh, hey, like I'm over here. I had two cesareans. What do you mean you absolutely weren't going to?" Like I think it's just there's such a stigma around it and such like
Yeah. That's a stigma.
yeah, and I know that there are risks, like there are things associated with it. There is, all of that, but when it comes down to it, there are still moms that are having C-sections, and there are very reasonable explanations of why. And even with planned ones, a lot of the times it's their second. So they had an emergency C-section for the first one, and now they're deciding to go that route for their second. So yes, it's planned, but it's because of past experiences that mom has been through, and like I said, they have every right to be able to go that route. Like I think every mother is allowed to choose how they are going to birth their child. Like I have no problem with any form of how someone wants to birth their baby, and I think that same respect has to be given in any situation. So
Yeah, totally agree.
it's definitely something that like those feelings do get brought up when you're out in like social settings, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like
Oh, you're like, I'm not gonna say anything, but it's like, wow, what does that mean for me? Like, and if I
yeah,
had said, like, how would she have felt if I'd spoken up and said, "Oh, I've had 2 Cs." No? But yeah, and I know mothers that have had a, really traumatic natural birth, and they actually elected for a C-section because that trauma was too hard for them, and they didn't wanna go through it again, and, like I said, if the doctor is willing to respect their wishes and go ahead with that, everyone else should, like, I just think there's so much judgment, like, on mothers in general, and birth just shouldn't be one of them, especially when, you're the worst judge of yourself. You don't need it from everyone else.
yeah. And then how was it for you postpartum, like seeing your scar and like seeing that on your body?
I'll never forget sort of the first time I looked at it after I had Oakland, and it was when I had the first shower, and the midwife got me up. She took me to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and it was really funny. Like, the first thing I thought of was like to when I wasn't pregnant, and I don't remember what I looked like without the scar there. And I was like, oh, so this is what I look like now. I was totally okay with it, but it was a really strange moment, actually, just looking at it. It kind of just hit me a bit different, and I thought, okay, so this is how my body looks now. And it was something that I was like, I had no control over this physical mark on my body. It went back to that whole, I was wheeled away so quickly. This is what happened. I was cut open. The baby's safe. That's great. But it was a feeling of not, I had no say over what was happening to my body.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of times, like, people don't understand. Like, you went through major surgery, and yeah, you do have this massive opening on your body that you have to care for and protect. And, I just had little Rosie, and like I could hold her. But I know that you had talked about, like with your second, like having to pick them up and hold them and be with them, with that scar, and like
Yeah, it was difficult. Yeah.
the healing process for that was something that I had not planned. So I had not even known, like, do you bleed after a cesarean? Like, what happens? I had not planned for any of the care of a cesarean. So, you obviously still bleed afterwards. Like, I don't know if it's more or less. Like, I don't have anything to reference
Yeah, because 'cause you've got
on
nothing to compare it to.
right. But I mean, I still bled afterwards. I still had to take it easy. I slept almost sitting up for probably the first week or so. I just had a massive pillow behind me, and I actually had a step stool on the side of our bed because our bed was a little high, and it was hard to get up and down off the bed because of the scar. And even laughing hurt. I would tell people, like, don't make me laugh, because the laughing of it, I felt like I was I was going to rip it.
You were gonna bust open.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was so nervous
Yeah,
about that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
every time I got out of bed, I was so slow. I was like, "Okay." I know I wasn't technically gonna bust open, but it was like I was so aware of what had just happened to me that I was getting out of bed so slowly, and I was pushing with my arms, not trying to use any muscles down there, and walking so slow, like, as if I walked normal, something would happen. Sort of the second time around, I was a little bit not flippant with it and, like, careless, but because I did have Oakland to care for, couldn't take it so slow, and I was so, so lucky that I had a lot of help because, my fiancé, Mitch, he worked shift work, so when we got back from the hospital, he was on night shift, which meant that he could put Oakland into the cot for me, but he wasn't home in the morning for when he woke him up, but his nan lives around the corner, and she would come over in the morning and get Oakland out of the cot for me. But yeah, like, getting used to not being able to fully pick him up and, give him cuddles like that, that was really hard, and I think hard on him too because he didn't understand.
Yeah. So did you nurse them afterwards, or what did you do?
I breastfed Oakland for a month, and Romy, I put her on a bottle as soon as we got home from the hospital, so I breastfed her for 5 days. I couldn't I had so much milk, and I know that's what happens, like, now the more research I've done on breastfeeding, I just really struggled with breastfeeding, and it got to a point with Oakland where it wasn't worth my mental health to continue, and that was something I struggled with as well. But yeah, just the engorgement and, like, I've never felt pain like it when your milk comes in, and I likened it to, like, had green ants biting me, like, all over my boobs, and yeah, so after a month and sort of the cracks weren't healing, and yeah, so I decided to stop, and that's something else that I feel like we get judged for as well. But see, I'm so, like, I would try it again if I had a third baby, see how it goes, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah. 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 That's exactly like how I feel. And, there is that kind of like judgment associated with it. I was able to nurse Rosie perfectly fine because that was something that I was nervous about after a cesarean, because they tell you, like, oh, you won't be able to have like a breastfed baby like after you have a C-section and la da da. So I was super nervous because that I was like, well, I have to at least try this because, I failed her, like giving her a C
Yeah,
section. And, we were able to breastfeed for maybe 14 or 15 months. And then I was just kind of like,
that's amazing.
yeah. And, it was just kind of, she was starting to wean off herself. Like, she wasn't really as interested anymore. And I was just kind of like, I want my own body back. Like, I want to just try to like wean off of things. For moms out there, it is possible to breastfeed after a cesarean. If you do or you don't, that's perfectly fine too. But I think that there's just so much, again, that like stigma and judgment of like what you can and can't do and what this means and what that means and everything that's associated with it. So
Yeah. I actually remember when the obstetrician came in and said, "Okay, we're going to do a cesarean with Oakland." I thought to myself, just I never said it out loud, but I'm like, "Oh shit, I wonder if I can breastfeed." Which I look back now and kind of laugh at because I didn't end up liking breastfeeding, but it was sort of that like, "Oh my god, like, am I going to be able to do it?" But I never ended up like enjoying it or liking it anyway. And I totally agree with what you're saying. Whatever works for you, and there is so much judgment. And I just think with how hard motherhood is, you've just got to do what works for you. And yeah, you shouldn't be judged on that because, you're just doing the best you can.
yeah, I completely agree with all of that. So what else kind of like helped you postpartum with a cesarean? Like what was kind of like your biggest helpful tip like you could give a mom who just went through a C-section, or what advice do you have for them?
Well, first off, I would say be easy on yourself mentally. That would be my first one. Really try and work through those feelings that you may or may not be feeling. Just really maybe researching the actual surgery that you've had because I don't think I really realized how much of a major procedure it was. Asking the doctors plenty of questions about your recovery because I feel like they don't give you too much recovery info aside from kind of like a sheet of paper that I got that said, "Oh, start doing these exercises after this lot." When your 6-week checkup, that's it. Um, I actually was a bit like you. I sort of slept on an angle, taking it really easy and relying on your partner for things, not getting up if you don't have to. I used an ice pack sometimes just to help with the swelling, just asking for help if you really do need it. Yeah, they're probably my biggest tips. And, if you don't have the help, just, take it easy on yourself, really, because you've been through a major surgery. And I don't think there's enough emphasis put on that.
Yeah, I mean, like I have again like nothing to judge off of the difference between a vaginal birth and a cesarean birth, but it's still it's challenging to recover from. It's not an easy way out. It's not anything to take lightly. It's not like something that you can just bounce back from right away. Like you need to take that time to heal and process what happened, and especially if it was rushed and an emergency, and like you said, like mentally kind of processing it and going over that, and physically there's so much involved with all of it that and I think to people that haven't had one or might know somebody that did, try just being, I guess, like more aware of what that person has gone through, and maybe just ask them, like, how did you feel about your birth? Because when when we assume like, oh, like they did that because of this and that, you're not relating to that person. You're not finding a common ground if you're just judging them and saying like, I can't believe you did that. Then you're not able to really kind of have a conversation and see like how they were feeling. And in the end of it, like, we're all moms, we're all going through motherhood together. There's still every single same scenario that is going to happen in motherhood, like no matter how you birthed your baby. So I think just understanding that, we really are all here, at least like I feel like, to support each other and to be there for each other and to have compassion and help each other, because I feel like you do need all of that in motherhood.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it really does come back it does come back to the assumption. You can't relate to someone if you assume that, oh, they did that because of that. You just never know. Just you can't even put yourself in their shoes because you don't know. You just got to really see how they are and, walk it through with them. I would never, judge a mum on their birth. I just think it's so unique to the person, and motherhood is just so hard, and you're so right about it doesn't make you less of a mum. I guarantee, say that you find yourself caught up in a toilet having, a moment and you're crying, you're a mum. It doesn't matter. You're all gonna have those moments where you're just like, I am losing it here. Like,
Yeah, and that made me think of something, but I kind of lost it.
that's okay.
I guess that comes with motherhood too.
Oh, 100%.
I think it's just, yeah, like we all are going to go through these same things. And it's important to kind of like understand that, we can beat ourselves up over all those what if scenarios. But when it comes down to it, we're all just taking like one step at a time and going through all the decisions that we have to make. And oh, I guess I was going to say too, you physically can't tell by looking at a mom like how she had her child. And when you're there, like holding your baby, you said in that situation where somebody had mentioned a negative kind of indication of cesarean, and here you are sitting there. It's not like the scars across our forehead or somewhere very
No,
obvious.
that's
Like,
right. You don't know.
yeah, you don't see that scar. You don't see um how that happened. Even in a bikini or something, a lot of the times it's below that line. So you're not able to see that. So I think just being more aware that, there are people that are, I don't want to say like keeping quiet, but maybe, like you said, like, oh my gosh, like how would that mom feel if I did say like, hey, here I am, I had a cesarean section. You don't want that person to feel bad for something that they just said, and you've done the work to kind of recover from that. But those initial first few like weeks, months, everything that people are kind of like externally saying, I think our mental state is a little kind of fluctuating at that point in early motherhood. So you have to be more sensitive to things that are said. I think, you have the ability to cry a lot more often. Things kind of hit you a lot harder. You take offense to things. And it's just something you can't control. And it's something that's just kind of occurring, and your hormones are fluctuating and things are all happening and you're on high alert, and so much is going on that I think it's hard even to jump back to that mental state of how it was when you're through it. But I think just trying to remember, like, oh, yeah, when I was a new mom, this is definitely something that would kind of like make me just, just kind of.
Yeah, totally agree. I really think that, something else that played into how I mentally recovered was, there is a lot of research out there, like you said, that cesareans, like the trend is there's more and more getting done every day. And, there's a lot of people that was what I've seen on social media that say, you have a choice. Your doctor shouldn't be pushing or that or that, that. And while that may be true, and in some cases, maybe some hospitals are trying to get women out really quickly, that's something you can't control. So to see that being said is a really tough pill to swallow. And it was for me because I was only doing what I thought. I was trusting my healthcare professional. And, whether or not what their decision was the right one, that's out of my control. And I can't factor that into the what ifs because, I'm already trying to process it on myself. So, yeah, there's definitely a case for it. Maybe the reason that there's so many of them is because some shouldn't be being performed. But again, if that's out of the mother's control, then it's not really healthy for her to be seeing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I think it's something that I didn't dig into and I didn't look at and I didn't even comprehend until after it was done. And so now here you are as a mom who had a C-section, and you're being told, oh, your doctor pushed it on you, or you really didn't have to do that, or that didn't need to be done. If you were in a different setting, that wouldn't have happened. And the fact is, it did happen. It's already happened. You don't need to hear that it should have been done differently, because like you said, you're already internally processing that, and you're already thinking that yourself, like, did I do enough? Is that okay? What did I do? You're already going through that enough. And now you're getting all this, yeah, if you were here, if you did this, if you had a voice, if you had more support, like all these noises are going on, and you're again second guessing yourself, and advocate for, oh yeah, like I should have done this, and I should, and you know you again, like, we're planning on a VBAC. Like, that's like, if we have more children, that's what I would like to try for. But now I have the mental state of, if it doesn't happen, if I have another C-section, that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And yeah, it really just comes back down to the way people get information out there, or the way, you drop your opinion into a conversation of something. There's a way and means of doing anything. And yeah, it's just not what you want to see. And I'm all for being informed, and you do need to know these things sometimes. But like you said, when it's been and done, like, and it's after the fact, it's really hard to get your head around and to process that on top of everything else that you feel. And sometimes it's not even the opinions, it's the what you've got in your head of what other people are thinking of your situation. You're like, I wonder if they think I'm this. I wonder if they think that I've just popped out. I wonder if they think that, oh my God, you know, she didn't have to birth naturally. She's so lucky. It's the voices in my head of like, what are these people thinking about? You know?
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important to just have a conversation with other people and be like, hey, like, I had a cesarean. How does that make you feel? And then, okay, why do you feel like that? This is how I feel. And I think just opening up that conversation and getting that information of feelings out there is really just like what needs to happen. Because, yeah, like, I mean, it could be a friend that doesn't even know what happened, or maybe they didn't ask. And I think those initial first few weeks, months, it's hard to have that conversation. It's hard to process that because you really haven't even fully understood what happened or how you feel about it. But I think just like, being open to conversation and being open to sharing your feelings helps a lot in processing it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, like, that sort of goes back to my whole reason behind the blog. You can have all these ideas, like thoughts circling around your head, but until you're getting them out and talking about them, like, I can't even tell you the amount of mums that reached out to me for particular blog posts that just resonated with them. That's amazing. Like, if I'd never written that, I would never know these people have felt that way. And just hearing things like, like, this truly made me feel normal. This made me feel like, what I'm going through, the feelings I felt, had I not have written that, I would not know that about someone. So it really does come back to that, having the conversations. And that's something I think this day and age a lot of people don't have openly. I think we're definitely getting better, but and I hope it's the trajectory that it stays on. But yeah, it definitely comes back to the whole conversing.
Yeah. Well, I love having these conversations, and I'm so thankful for you coming here and talking about this and sharing your story, and really just, you know, I was super excited to do this because I was like, yes, like, it's Cesarean Awareness Month, and just opening up that dialogue and really bringing it full circle of, what we're trying to do. And I think you're trying to get out there and share these stories to help moms feel, supported and not alone and normal. And that's something that I'm very much like passionate about and trying to do as well, and just really like bring moms together to feel more okay in motherhood and supported, and know that they're not alone and that there are people out there. And we're really trying to just share our side of things and express what's going on so that moms can listen or read what other people are going through and not feel like they're going through it alone. So thank you so much for, really coming and taking the time to do this.
Thank you so much. And I actually wouldn't have even known it was Cesarean Awareness Month if I hadn't have spoken to you the other day. So thank you for sharing that with me. And I too love having these conversations. So it was really good to get to do this today.
Well, do you want to let us know how we can reach you, where you're at on social media and things like that, and share, how we can read your blog?
Sure, yeah. So my blog's called Keeping It Peachy, and you can find me on Instagram at Keeping It Peachy the blog. And the website for my blog is www.keepingitpeachy.com.au.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to share all that in the show notes so that people can find you and reach out to you and, really just connect with you. And like you said, like I love it when people kind of, oh, I felt normal or I felt like that way too. And, just like building that connection and having people, on here that people are going to be able to like connect with and relate, because I think building that community is huge. And so like, if anybody resonated with what you were saying, I hope that they like go and read your blog and really just connect with you and have that community there. So
Yeah, yeah. I love when people say that kind of stuff to me as well because, it makes it all worth it. It's like, yes, I'm doing this for a reason. Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much again.
well, this wraps up yet another episode of Entering Motherhood. I hope that you have found this episode helpful, and if you liked it, please share it with others who might also benefit from this information. If there's anything that you'd like to know more about, or maybe you know someone who'd like to be on the show, please visit my website, enteringmotherhood.com. I'm so thrilled to be going on this journey with you and getting the amazing opportunity to help moms during this postpartum experience. You can also now find us on Instagram and Facebook at Entering Motherhood.